Everybody. Thanks for coming back from your lunch. Hope you enjoyed the refreshments. They were all healthy. And Michelle Cowee is our dietitian, also a certified diabetes educator. She's our dietitian here at Carson Valley Medical Center. And she selected those recipes, and we have the copies of those for you to make them at home. And she's going to talk about eating during the holidays. So I'll give it up to you, Michelle.
Thank you. It's so nice to see such a full room. As you heard earlier, we were getting to be taped. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. I like to keep the presentation informal. Just kind of stop me or raise your hand. Or if it's something we'll talk about a little bit later, I'll mention that. We're going to talk about how to eat healthy as far as cooking and some techniques and things like that, but also the situations that we get into around food. How do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? So we're going to talk about all of that today. You have plenty of handouts. You have all of the slides in one of your handouts, and there's room for notes so you can add things. Thank you again for coming. And throughout towards the end of our presentation, we have a surprise pumpkin pie for you all to sample, and you do have that recipe. And we also have some more raffle prizes. So it's going to be fun. Hopefully, a quick hour it'll go by and you'll enjoy it. Let me know if I'm not talking loud enough. If anybody can't hear me. And I do tend to talk with my hands sometimes, so I'll just warn anybody. If you get seasick, just let me know if I'm moving around too much. There we go. Okay, so the goals for holiday eating. Oftentimes people think healthy eating doesn't have to taste good, and that's not true. When you're trying to eat for good health and you want to enjoy the holidays, you want all of your favorites to taste good. And you can do some modifications. You don't have to lose all that wonderful flavor, but you still can make it better for your heart, better for your diabetes. Some of the ways that you can do that is cooking with less saturated fat, and we definitely want to try to get to zero trans fats, because trans fats are horrible for our heart health. So we're going to talk about that, and as you can see on my table, I have a lot of different examples of some of the things that you can try if you're not already doing so, including more healthier carbohydrate foods. Oftentimes when people have diabetes, they think that carbohydrates are a no-no, and that's definitely not true. It's your body's energy. They're good for you. They have a lot of good nutrients. So let's increase the healthy ones. All your favorite foods can fit. We all grew up with some traditional foods, and if it's the holidays, it's the only time that you cook it. I say, definitely go for it. Can you make some modifications? Can you use healthier fats, less salt, more herbs and spices? Probably, and it wouldn't hurt the recipe. So don't be afraid to have some of your traditional things. Now, I might say you might want to experiment before the big day, if you're going to make a significant change, because you don't want to omit something and all of a sudden find out you don't like how it quite turned out. So you might want to experiment on your family a little bit before the big day. And by doing all of this, your goal is to help you maintain a healthy blood sugar. That's why you're all here. You have diabetes. You want to keep it healthy, okay? Maintaining your body weight throughout the holiday. Oftentimes people are on diets or they're trying to lose weight for whatever reason. Through the holidays, it's a very tough time because there's so many situations, so many foods that we want to try and sample. If you can maintain your weight through the holidays, that's a success. So, if you have been losing weight and you kind of hit a plateau right now, but you're maintaining, that's a good thing. Be happy. Don't gain that holiday 5 or 10, because that's, January 1st, all those New Year's resolutions come up, and weight is often one of the top resolutions. So let's start the new year maintaining that weight, because that's a good pat on the back. I can do this. And then, you can be aggressive with your weight loss. So how are we going to reach those goals? Well, one, we want to cut the fat, and we're saying cut it, reduce it, use healthier, not give it up completely. You know, fat is an important part of our health. We want to make sure it is the healthier types of fat, so we don't want all that saturated trans fats clogging up the arteries, causing a problem. But some recipes do call for a lot of it, but you don't need to lose the flavor if you cut it back a little bit. So we want to do that. You want to increase the flavors with spices, not salt, but spices, herbs, and things like that, because they just give you flavor and they're not going to harm your health in any way. Learning to use artificial sugars or substitutes, and again, trying new recipes. If it's brand spanking new, my husband does not like when I do it on company. So he prefers that we try it at home first. Although I have been very lucky lately, and the recipes I pick out have been very good. The surprise pumpkin pie recipe that you're going to sample later and that you have was like a jewel, and my whole family likes it. I share it all the time. It's so easy, and the flavor is wonderful, and you can cut the fat and reduce the sugar and still enjoy that pumpkin flavor that reminds you of what? The holidays. So it's very exciting. So some of the oils, I keep mentioning the oils that we want to use. Heart healthy, monounsaturated, things like canola oil, peanut oil. If some of you are doing a deep fried turkey, peanut oil is what they sell you in those big drums. Because it can get really hot. But the good thing about it, if you are frying, it's a healthy one, so that's kind of a good thing. So we have, the Innova is another new one on the market that goes in that category with monounsaturated, the olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil. So you might start seeing that on the shelves where you shop. And then of course there's good old-fashioned olive oil. So you have lots of choices. Now how to reduce some of the sugar. The one that I brought that might be the easiest is Splenda, and I don't get any kickbacks from any of the companies. I just share with you the things that I do. Splenda for baking is something that you can take a recipe that you have at home, and if it calls for a cup of sugar, you can use a cup of this. You don't have to do any adjustments and finagling, 75%, 50%, anything like that. It cuts your sugar in half. But you're not going to lose any of the browning or the raising, and you've got the volume that your recipe calls for. And again, you're not a test kitchen. You don't want to go through 10 batches to figure out what the right amount of these changes might be. So this you can do right off the bat, very easy with something that you have at home. And for a long time at the holidays, a lot of our recipes called for brown sugar. Well, now we have brown sugar Splenda. So if you make the sweet potatoes and it needs a little brown sugar, or you need it for another recipe, maybe Christmas you do a ham, you have some of these things that can help you. I'm not saying you're maybe getting rid of all of the sugar, but you're cutting it back, and that's a good step in the right direction. So again, a list of the bad fats. We talked a little bit about some of these healthy ones. The bad fats are called saturated fats, and they're called trans fats. Saturated fats come from animal products. So anything that walks on all fours, cows, our butter, our milk, cheese has saturated fat, prime rib, saturated fat, bacon, lard, grease, all things come from animals. So we try to limit those types of things. The one that we want to get rid of completely is trans fats. And so we'll do a real quick lesson on label reading, because what happens is there's a new, the labeling laws changed, and they have to list trans fats on all of the labels. But they allowed the company to round. So if you look at a label and it says 0 trans fats, you think, oh, that's a good product, and you throw it in the cart. Well, we got to go a step farther. If you see 0, well, it's like, okay, passed the first test. Now I have to go down to the ingredients and look for the word hydrogenated. And if it says hydrogenated, put it back on the shelf. And you want to do that because 0.5, you're thinking, what's 0.5? That's pretty small. That's not a big deal, right? Well, 0.5 can add up, especially in these tub margarines and different things like that. There's one example, those big tubs that we've all seen, 70 servings in one of those big tubs. And it said no trans fats, but when I went down to the ingredients, there it was. So if you do a little math, 0.5 times 70, 35 grams of trans fat are in that tub. So that 0.5 adds up. And so if you have all these different products at home, it can, add up and be harmful to your heart health. So some of the products that are good, this one says right on the label, non-hydrogenated, okay? One of the things that I like to share with people is oftentimes the front of the label, it's marketing. They say a lot of things to grab your attention. Oh, okay, I'm going to put this in there. The truth, where you can get the information that, it's not the sales pitch, it has to be on there, it's factual, is the label and the ingredients, okay? So, yes, it's grabbed your eye, but I'm going to double check. And I checked, and it's not there. And Smart Balance is one of those, you can pass that around. Smart Balance is one that's often recommended for heart health. Smart Balance can maybe help lower cholesterol. Another one that I found, and I brought in a container so people can see it, it's relatively new. I don't know if it's in all the stores, but it's called Canola Harvest. And again, none of the bad trans fats to it. So if you needed a margarine, you need something to spread on your toast, things like that, they have these alternatives for you.
Michelle,
Yes.
they just announced the other day that the Congress or the legislature, whoever it is working on making them put the actual amount of trans fats on those labels.
Yes, that would be good.
If
Those
it happens,
labels-
it'll be good, yeah.
The labels are there to help us, but oftentimes the labels themselves are a little bit confusing. There's so much information and it doesn't make sense or it doesn't add up. So it's very confusing. If they could be more straightforward, that would be good.
What do you recommend baking with?
Well, there are no stick margarines without any trans fats. So I would recommend baking with the real deal. Again, how often do you do it? Are you doing it just at the holidays? Are there ways that maybe you can cut some of the fat and use maybe part butter, part vegetable or canola oil in the recipe without losing some of the texture and consistency? You can do things like that. But butter is going to be a little bit better for you than the margarines with the trans fats. But again, we got to look at the big picture. If you're going to put butter in your cookies, can you put something else in your mashed potatoes? Can you put something else instead of slathering the turkey with, a butter herb blend? Can you rub it with some oil and seasonings? So if I'm going to use butter here, where else in my day can I cut some of that out? Okay? And again, if it's the holiday, if you're a baker and you do it once a week all year long, then we really have to look at your meal planning. But if it's the holidays, hopefully you're baking, you share it, and then when the company comes in and then they're leaving, they take some of it with them so that you're not stuck with all these cookies calling you, eat me, when they're in the house, the temptation's too great, so share it. Yes.
You were talking about the Splenda.
Yes.
I do a lot of canning,
Okay.
and I'm not sure about Splenda. I thought it was fructose used for canning, like.
I am not a canner, so I would have to do a little research and look that up for you, because I honestly I don't do that, so I would have to check. But fructose is a sugar, coming from fruit. It's better than corn syrup. It's better than white sucralose.
See, I'm allergic to corn.
Oh, okay. So again, I don't know. I'd have to, I would go up to their website and pose that question to their website, and it's just www.splenda.com. And because I'm sure people have canned and done that. I have a friend, a dietitian, who's done some canning of jams and things. She uses her, the bread makers, and she uses a little bit of pectin to help thicken it. So she reduced, I believe, some of the sugar. But again, I myself have not done a lot of that. I'd have to look that up for you. Okay. Good question. I'm sorry I couldn't help you.
That's great.
So how to substitute fat? First of all, we talked about maybe using some of these healthier margarines without the trans fats. And in place of some of the butter, is there times that we can use these healthier oils instead of butter? If a recipe calls for maybe a half a stick, can you cut that in half and pour a little bit of olive oil or canola oil with it for the fat that you need? You still get a little bit of that butter flavor. But also, can you try different techniques in the things that you cook? Grill, bake, broil, raise the turkey up on one of those racks so that the fat can drip away. When I cook a turkey, there's a couple of different things. I do rub it with oil and then put the herbs on it, but then we will use some low sodium chicken broth in the pan. Set the pan, put carrots, onions, celery, set the bird on top of that, use the olive oil, and then having a low sodium, these definitely don't have any fat to them, then you can kind of baste with this. You don't have to have all that butter in there to make the drippings and then baste with all that fat butter. And one of the things, why I kind of brought both of these here, again, it's the labeling. Chicken broth, 99% fat-free, okay? You look at this one, sodium, low sodium. There's no fat in this either, okay? So you can get low fat and low sodium in this one for the same thing, but they still have the two of them out there. So again, it's a marketing thing. There's the fat is gone anyway.
Watch for MSG in them too.
Hopefully no MSG. Some people are sensitive.
I can't handle it.
And that's where reading labels helps you find things that you may need to avoid for your own, health issues. So grilling, baking, broiling, trying different techniques of cooking can help save the fat. Okay. Now in here also I like to include, since we're talking about substituting fat, well, what if a recipe calls for sour cream? What can you do? Here's some options. Some people can use, low-fat yogurt or cottage cheese blend. You can do the cottage cheese with a teaspoon of lemon juice, or you can just go to the light or the fat-free sour cream. It just kind of depends what you want to do. There's, when whipped cream on your pie, they make sugar-free. They make, next to no fat whipped toppings now. So again, there's more options for us out there. Creamed milk. You can use like evaporated milk. Evaporated skim milk. It's often funny, we have condensed and we have evaporated milk. They have fat-free in both of them. A lot of people don't realize that. So there's, again, ways to cut down some of the calories. The pumpkin pie that you use has evaporated milk in it, fat-free, okay? But here's, again, a way that you can cut some of the calories without losing the flavor.
Into your cream and, what about Dream Whip?
Dream Whip.
It's dry, the dry package and you whip it up.
What are you adding to it? Just,
Put on topping like for Jello or pudding
I'd have to sit, I don't know what's in it. Again,
Can I say something on
Sure.
that one? It's full of corn syrup and that's sugar.
okay. So that's again where you need to read the label. And a point that you're making there is a good one, corn syrup. Sugar comes under many different words, and you have to kind of start learning some of the different words. Oftentimes, anything with an OSE is a sugar, okay? So it doesn't always come right out and say sugar. So you have to kind of be a little bit of a detective to determine that. But when you read the label, under total carbs, it'll tell you that's how much sugar the body's going to get from that particular food item. So always read the label. And I have to say, with the Cool Whips and the Dream Whips, and I love to cook. So I cook more than I ever do any of the baking, so I don't use a lot of whipped cream or Cool Whip, so I apologize about that. But I do a lot of cooking with non-fat milk or 1% milk instead of whole milk. Again, you're just cutting out some of the bad fat. You're still getting the protein and some of the other good stuff from the milk that the recipe might call for. Taking your cheeses and going to reduced fat. Fat-free doesn't taste very good, but some of the reduced fat cheeses are wonderful. And if the cheese is being blended with other ingredients and spices and herbs, you're not going to miss some of that fat when you're mixing it with these other things. So definitely, this is a way to reduce some of the fat in your holiday meal plan. Some more substitutions for ricotta cheese. They do make low-fat and fat-free ricotta cheese. Some people might use the reduced fat cottage cheese as well. Ground beef, of course, you can always get the extra lean. If you brown it, you drain that fat away. Some people will go the extra mile and rinse it. And when you get regular beef and you do brown it, strain it, rinse it. Now you have a lean beef. You've gotten rid of all the fat. Some people might use ground turkey, okay? Some people might blend it. Maybe you need that flavor of the beef to satisfy your taste. Blend it half and half. That's a good way to mix it and get the flavor you like. With bacon, Canadian bacon or lean ham is a good alternative to regular bacon. Bacon is just high fat, saturated fat. Again, sausages, they have lots of different, there's so many choices out there with lean or turkey sausages and things like that.
I was going to ask you about turkey bacon.
Mm-hmm. Turkey bacon is good. It's leaner. Sometimes you have to watch the salt content. If a person maybe has congestive heart failure, hypertension, the salt might be a little bit more significant. So again, look at your whole day. If you have a salt restriction and you're keeping it at 2,000 or whatever goal the dietitian or your physician has recommended for you, can you fit that in? If you do choose that turkey bacon and it is higher in salt, later in the day, where can I take something else out? And so you have to it's a balancing act. Yes?
Can ground chicken replace ground turkey?
Sure.
I mean, equal countings?
Yes. Chicken breast, turkey breasts are very lean. You can do both. Again, though, watch where you get it. I bought it at a grocery store one time. I won't name the name. And went home and was browning it up to put it in a recipe. And all this fat, I'm thinking, this is kind of gross. It's, I was hoping, it should be lean. And then I saw there was bits in it. So bone, skin. Yeah, it was turkey, but it was all kind of turkey parts as well. So you want to make sure that you get ground turkey breast. Or, if you go to the store, there's Jenny O and there's the turkey shop. But if you don't see that, if you see a turkey breast there, take it to your butcher. They'll be happy to grind it up for you. And then you know what you're getting. Because if it has the skin, you can tell them, remove the skin, just grind the meat. So, don't be afraid. The butchers like to do some of those things. We don't have as much contact with them, but I think they really enjoy that. And if you shop at the same store, you get to know them, that's a good thing. And they'll maybe carry things that you like, or they'll have that for you. They might have a good piece of meat in the back that they saved for you. So, and you can do that with, if you want to make a healthier ground hamburger, and you want to be sure you're getting something good, take a piece of roast or something that you see, maybe it's on special, have them grind it up for you. Don't be shy. The thing about the sausages and processed meats, generally things processed are high in salt. So if salt is a concern for you, limiting that is probably very important. I always tell my patients that if it's round, it did come off the animal that way. So they're adding salt and lots of stuff that we probably don't want to know about. So, when you get lunch meat and it looks like a piece of ham or a piece of roast beef or a piece of turkey, that's better. Bologna or that. Have you ever seen that chicken roll? Oh, when I was a kid, that was so horrible. They just add stuff, and so that's not good for you. So think about that. Unfortunately, sausages and things like that fall into that round category. Eggs. There's so many alternatives. A few eggs are not going to hurt anybody. If you're using eggs in a lot of the recipes, you can use the egg whites. Or if you don't like to waste, some people don't feel bad throwing out that yolk, you can do things like buy egg beaters, which is the protein of the egg anyway. So you have a lot of options here when you need to use eggs. If you need an egg as a thickener, you can go to things like cornstarch, flour, to thicken recipes. So you have alternatives. Mayonnaise is another, it's used in a lot of dips and different things, but there's a lot of great tasting alternatives to the higher fat mayonnaises. This particular one I got just because my husband's a mayonnaise fan, and this is one that he likes. We've tried them all, from the he started with the high fat, went to the fat free, absolutely hated some of those. But through trial and error, we found the one that he likes, and everybody here, people will swear by mayonnaise or Best Foods or Miracle Whip. We all have our favorites, but they all have lighter versions of them. So, find the one that works for you. But again, look to make sure there's no trans fats. We don't want any of the bad stuff in there as well. And again, if you're cutting out the fat in this, and you're making a dip or a spread with it, if you're adding spices, you're not going to notice that some of the fat is missing, so then it's not so bad.
What is the difference between light mayonnaise and low fat?
Low fat, the definition means it has to have 3 grams of saturated fat or fat per serving. That's it. Light means it can be reduced from, if the original was 10, this one might be 6 or 7. It is lighter, okay? So you have to look at the words. Watch for the words, 50% reduced, okay? Reduced from what? If it was 100% fat before, now it's only 50% fat, you're still getting a lot of fat. So you have to look carefully at the label and what it's telling you. Again, it's sometimes they use that as marketing to draw you in. But you have to think of the product, what it is. Okay. Salad dressings, another great way to, maybe cut some of your fat for your holiday meal because you're going to put maybe, real butter in something else. There's lots of wonderful flavoring. This are a couple of favorites at our house. Bernstein's roasted garlic. Those words right there tell you roasted. That's a way to cook to add flavor. The garlic, balsamic vinegar, lots of flavor, and only 3.5 grams of total fat. If you tend to be heavy-handed with your salad dressing and you need control, they have these little pumps now. And the pumps are actually kind of cool because when you're pumping, you're spreading it out kind of nice, making it get on all those different lettuce leaves. So you have the flavor in every bite. So look at your meal. Where don't you mind cutting some of the fat and trying something a little different? And what foods that you make, I really do need a little bit of butter in that one. Again, look at the whole meal. Let's just not put butter and fat on every dish because that's the way you used to do that, or Grandma used to do that. Okay, some ways to cut some of the cream soups if that's a holiday, using skim milk. Now this nut, you in place of some of the nuts, you might put some dried fruit in there, but I often encourage you, nuts are a heart-healthy kind of fat, and particularly walnuts and almonds, they go the extra mile in preventing heart disease. So if your recipes, include those kind of nuts, I think they're wonderful. All nuts, again, are healthy, but those two will go the extra mile to protect you. So putting walnuts in the brownie or putting walnuts on your salad would be a great way to add a healthy fat. There's some ways to, if you need baking, chocolate, how you can use alternatives. And again, going from butter and lard to using things that aren't, again, I don't know how well the canola harvest that I shared with you would hold up, in a recipe for baking. I haven't baked with it yet. Again, that's where I would think the butter, because we can't, none of the stick margarines are without the trans fats, unfortunately. So hopefully those companies are continuing to work on that for us. So how can you include healthier carbohydrates? Yes?
I don't know how to read labels yet.
Okay.
I'm reading this one and it says the third ingredient is high fructose corn syrup.
It is. But again, when you're looking at when you're spraying it, you're using a small portion of it. So the amount that you're going to get is probably small. Now, if that was maybe on a salad dressing you're pouring, you might think twice, but you're using such a small amount.
So would that show up under the sugar category then?
That high fructose, yes, that's going to be under the sugar on that label.
And if it says 1 gram of sugar?
I wouldn't worry about that. 1 gram is pretty small.
Okay.
In our diabetic meal plan, anything with 5 grams of sugar or carbs or less, we consider a free serving. So that 1 gram is not harmful. And again, it's the technique. We're also trying to cut the fat, and so oftentimes with salad dressings, it's the fat content that we're worrying about. And again, those pumps help people to portion it out better. I've had patients, again, they love, they pour it on pretty heavy-handed, and so this pump keeps them from using so much. Same thing with those spray pans, okay? When you spray that on there, it's going to help whatever food you're cooking not to stick. Versus when we pour the olive oil, even though it's healthy, we pour it, we're going to get more than a spritz, right? And it is still a fat. 1 tablespoon has 120 calories.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So again, if we're cutting the fat and we're spraying, we're using a lot less, okay? We're not giving it up, but we're using it more wisely. And then I have to say, this is not my saying, dietitian at Rayleigh's, she tells people, buy the most expensive oil you can afford, because then you're gonna use it sparingly, because it costs you
Yeah,
so much.
she's
So
quite interesting,
keep that
yeah.
in mind when you go there, because, you know, that's something that costs a lot. You're not gonna pour it out like water, right? So, that might help you
Okay,
use
hey.
things in moderation. Okay. Don't forget the vegetables with your meals. Lots of veggies.
You
That's
bet.
very important. If you tend to have plates of food out and there's appetizers before the big meal, have lots of raw veggies out as well, not just the crackers and cheese and the heavy dips. We did have some wonderful dips back here that you can try, all good for you. So maybe there's something new that'll show up on your table this year. But again, include those. Don't forget those during the holidays. Try maybe some whole wheat breadcrumbs with your stuffing. Maybe not 100%, but maybe go half and half. You can do that with some of your baking too. If you're going to try, to incorporate whole wheat flour and cookies and things, if you're taking a recipe from home, I would only cut it half and half. If you went all white flour to all whole wheat, it's pretty heavy, pretty dense. So if you cut it half and half, that might give you a better feel for the cookie. It's still going to be hopefully light enough and not be maybe a hockey puck. So, but you're still gaining a little bit of fiber, so that's a good thing. Include more brown rice, whole oats, barley in dishes. If you're making soups, put some barley in there instead of noodles all the time. Oats, make oatmeal type of cookies. Those would be a great thing. We don't need to have oatmeal just for breakfast. And oatmeal, whole oats with a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of butter or spray margarine can make a nice crumbly topping on a fresh fruit, so you feel like you're having that apple crisp type of thing. And you have a handout. I'm sorry to say I don't have the sugar alternative. My computer's missing a file.
Oh,
Yeah, from Monday till today it's missing, so I went to go print it off and I can't find it, so it's at my friend who's a computer gentleman. He's searching my hard drive to see where my program went, or my files went. So I do not have that, but if you're interested, if we have your number, we can definitely maybe try to get you that handout. I told you how to use all these substitutes if you were using Equal, Splenda, how they would be equivalent and things like that. So I apologize. I don't know what happened to that. So don't lose flavor. Spice it up. But we want to use spices and herbs, not salt. And again, when you're cutting some of the fat is a flavor, okay? But we don't want our food to still, to taste bad now. So use herbs. Maybe you start experimenting with some fresh herbs. There's lots of wonderful dried herbs. Depending what your recipe might call for, when a recipe calls for maybe a teaspoon of dry, you do maybe a full tablespoon of the fresh, because you need more of it to get the same flavor. When it dries, it becomes concentrated. So you can, play around with using fresh and different things. But there's also seasoning blends out there that don't include salt. Everybody's probably familiar with good old Mrs. Dash. Well, she's got 4 or 5 different flavor blends now. She has one that's called a table blend and a spicy blend. And here's one of my favorites, my family's favorite, Paul Perdome, chef from Louisiana. Salt-free seasoning. And I'll pass this one around. I've seen it at Albertsons. Not Albertsons. I've seen it at Walmart, Raley's, and I can't think of the other store, but not Albertsons, Save Marts.
Smith's maybe, yeah.
Maybe Smith's.
Yeah.
He does have other salted spices, so you got to make sure you buy the salt-free one.
Yep.
But there's lots of things out there you can try. When you buy these blends, though, you have to be very careful. Oftentimes, these blends, salt is one of the first ingredients. And you don't see it on the label. They don't tell you. In my example, I like to use is lemon pepper. Lemon pepper should say lemon pepper salt, because salt's one of the first 3, if not the first ingredient. So you have to, again, look at the label, turn it around, look at the ingredients to find the salt. So when you're using spices, we want to grab the ones with no salt to them. So don't go for the garlic salt, go for the garlic powder, go for the celery powder. They're often right next to each other, so you got to be careful you don't grab the wrong one. Any questions on spices?
measuring a spoon. Like a quarter teaspoon or something, count how many sprays they get up there.
Okay. To release some of the flavors from spices, especially the dried ones. They've been there for a little while. They tell you, don't keep them longer than a year. Put them in the palm of your hand and rub it out, and you get some of the flavors to start coming out. If you've ever done that, you just smell it. It smells so much more wonderful than when you just poured it out of the jar. So release those flavors. If you're cutting fresh herbs, the smaller you cut it, the more cuts that you give it, the more flavor that's going to be released. If you're cooking something for a long, long time, add those fresh herbs at the end, because you might add that flavor right out of it. If you're going to use a dried herb, put it in the broth or the liquid so that it has a chance to kind of rehydrate and give some of those flavors out. And again, it tells you how to use the different herbs. So here's just an example of a comparison of a recipe. Traditional pumpkin pie with the crust, 286 calories versus the surprise pumpkin pie of 175. Total fat from 13 grams to 2 grams, pretty significant. And a big part of that is the surprise pumpkin pie doesn't have a crust. Like, that's the surprise. The crust is kind of built into the pie. You use a low-fat biscuit, so it firms it up a little bit. But pie crust, generally, you either put in the butter or the lard, and you're working it in there to make it light and fluffy, and that's where all that fat is coming from. Another way we cut the fat in it is using egg beaters or the egg whites instead of the whole egg. We use the condensed fat-free or skim milk versus the higher fat one. So lots of ways to reduce it. Sodium kind of went up a little bit in this one, but the carbohydrates relatively the same. And so the bottom line here is you're not necessarily going to get maybe a, quote, free dessert where it has no carbs, but how are you going to make it a little bit healthier? Because remember, it's the carbs we're looking at, and it's also your heart health. We're trying to work this together. Okay, so what are some of the challenges in the holidays? Why is this time of the year so tough? Well, we kind of get a head start with Halloween. Everybody's buying bags of candy, and lots of folks that I talked to didn't have that many trick-or-treaters. So what does that mean? Lots of candy at home. Get one. So then you're left with holding the bag, so to speak.
Oh.
And it's tempting. So, we start this holiday season, with candy. And then we go to Thanksgiving, and then we have Christmas, and we have New Year's. And, of course, at this time of year, we celebrate with friends and family, so then there's even more parties. If you're working, then they're having an event at work. So you're kind of confronted with food everywhere you go. And you don't want to, just because it's there, eat it. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later. So besides the parties and the dinners, of course, then there's gift baskets. I know my husband, he's a CPA. For years, he got so many boxes of chocolate. Oh my goodness, I couldn't give them away fast enough. Candy. That's a lot of businesses love to give it and share it. And so it can be really trying time, especially for the chocolate lovers that I know that are probably out there and don't want to pass up a good box of C's, right? Again, just another way to say a lot of these are high-risk events, or can be, if you think of them that way. So what do you need to do? First of all, you got to identify those events that put you in a situation where you might be, quote, high risk. If it's an office party and it's all catered by so-and-so and, everything is kind of high fat, you're thinking, what am I going to do when I get there? Well, start your day well. And one of the things to remember is you have diabetes, so we don't skip meals. We got to eat breakfast. We got to eat lunch. Maybe because you're going out and the food choices are probably going to be a little bit higher in fat, you cut the fat earlier in the day, okay? You can do that. Not the carbs. You still got to eat your carbs with lunch and your carbs with breakfast, but you can save up a little bit of those fat calories because you're going to have them later in the day. You have to kind of plan ahead. Stay physically active during the holidays. Don't take a vacation from your activity. Your activity helps burn calories. It helps bring your blood sugars down. So, you have to think positive that you can eat healthy. So you're in this situation and you're going to this party. Take a small plate if they offer it. If there's 2 sizes, take a smaller plate. Sample things. Serve yourself. Give yourself smaller portions. Don't feel like you can't try something, but maybe you just want a bite or 2 and that'll satisfy the taste. You don't have to go and have a heaping plate because it's there. So you can kind of control it by portioning it yourself. You do have to, I really believe in the visualization and planning ahead and thinking. When you're in one of those social situations and it's in a house and the buffet table's over here, well, let's not linger and talk with your friends over by the food. You keep seeing that and you keep looking at it and you want some. Or, you're standing by it and you're kind of nibbling. You don't remember that, when you're just standing there. So take your plate and maybe go to another part of the room. Totally enjoy the food. But when you've had what you need, keep yourself away from it. Don't put yourself into that temptation so that it's there all the time. There's different ways that you can kind of categorize these situations that you get into. Lots of control, some control, very little control. Lots of control would be party at your house and you know what you're serving. And you know that you've got lots of veggies, you've cut some of the fat. That's the ideal situation. Now we're going to get into something where you have some control. Maybe it's a buffet and it's a potluck and everybody's bringing dishes, so you know you can bring some healthy choices. And if it's a buffet, you can serve yourself. You don't have to take everything that's offered. You can just sample the things that you want to. Kind of like the buffets when we go to a restaurant. I always tell my patients, walk up and down the rows in the aisle first in the buffet line. Look at all the food that's there. Don't start at one end and pile it up, pile it up, pile it up. By the time you get to the end of the serving line, there's your most favorite thing. So you get another plate. So now you've got 2 plates. So plan ahead.
Right.
Take a look at everything that's there and pick your favorites. You make, I don't know, potato salad all the time at home. Why would you want to have it when you're out? When you can have this. I don't ever make this. So this is where I'm going to give my calories to, because I can do that. So think that way. Think about trying the things that really are important to you. A place where you have maybe very little control might be, a sit-down type of activity, and the meal is planned, it's already served up on the plate. You kind of have to take what you have. But again, just because it's served to you, if you're starting to get full, you don't have to eat it all. We can break free of the Clean Your Plate Club that you probably all were in when you were kids, right? Everybody remembers? Kids were starving somewhere, right? I can't remember if it was China or Africa or wherever my grandmother used to tell us.
They're all starving, that's right.
They were somewhere, and as kids, we were all ready to ship it over, but they wouldn't let us. But now as adults, that stays with us, right? We feel we have to clean our plate. We don't have to. So again, if you're in a buffet line or you're in a party, can you use the smaller plate so that your plate looks full? And so your mind is thinking, wow, I got a lot of food here, but it's a smaller plate, so it's healthier portions. You get those bigger plates and fill that up, well, there's a whole lot more calories there too. So different things that you might try. Just some of the review, definitely don't skip meals. You might have a low blood sugar, okay? And low blood sugars don't feel great, You get irritable and cranky, and who wants to be irritable and cranky at a holiday party? So don't skip your meals. It's really important, again, because of the blood sugars and your medications that you're taking. Be mindful of the time of the meal. Again, that's so that you prevent a low blood sugar. If you're on insulin, if you're on medication, it's working regardless of whether you're eating or not. So you do have to think about these things a little bit. So if you need a snack because you know that you're going out and dinner's probably not going to be served till 7 or 8, you ate lunch at 12, have a little bit of fruit beforehand. Give yourself some energy to hold you over till that meal. Plus, when you don't go so starved, you make better choices and you'll eat healthier portions. Again, look over all the food choices. Remember portion sizes, the things that you've learned. If some of you have been in the diabetes classes, we talk about the plate method, which we gave you all a copy of the plate method. Make your plate look like that. Half of it vegetables, loaded with fiber. It's going to help fill you up. So you're going to take smaller portions of the foods higher in calories, higher higher in carb content. So then it's going to be more balanced and given to you in a healthier way. All that fiber, for some of you who may not have been in some of the classes, I know I do see some unfamiliar or faces that are new to me. Fiber takes the stomach time to digest, and so it slows the release of sugar into the blood. And that's a good thing. When we eat highly processed foods, lots of juices, cookies, candies, sweets, the body doesn't have to work so hard, and it sends your sugar this way. We want slow and steady. So if half your plate is vegetables, then you're slowing down the mashed potatoes that you're taking with the turkey and the dinner roll, okay? Because you got all that salad and the broccoli or the green bean, almondine, or whatever it might be, something that's served. Saving up some of your fat calories for later in the day. Don't hang around the food table if it's a temptation. Slow down. Eat slowly. Enjoy the food you're eating. If you eat fast, you'll want to go back for seconds. It takes your stomach 20 minutes to signal your mind that you're full. So, have conversation and enjoy the event that you're at, and listen for the body to tell you, well, I've had enough. When you're having dessert, and you know you have dessert, you have a nice meal in front of you, maybe you forego some of the starch at the meal. Maybe you took a smaller serving of mashed potatoes and said, I'll pass on the dinner roll because I'm going to have that pumpkin pie and I want a sliver of apple or something. Okay, I cut out a little bit of my carbs with dinner because I knew the dessert was coming right after, and I did want to sample that. Okay, so what I was doing is, instead of eating all my carbs at my meal and then dessert on top of it, I took a little bit away, ate the dessert, and I'm still at a good range. Okay. Portion, portion, portion. It's kind of like Marsha. It's all about portions. You can have everything if you eat them in healthy portions. Today's world is the supersize and biggie world. If we all got back to smaller, healthier portions, you can have everything that you like. Don't deprive yourself. If you deprive yourself of something, you might set yourself up for a binge. If you'd have had half a cup of ice cream today at the party, that might have prevented you 2 days from now eating the half a gallon at home by yourself because I didn't eat any and you felt left out, and that's not fair. Enjoy it. Enjoy it in a healthy portion. And once you know you can have something, then it's not like hanging around there just waiting, to tempt you to overdo it at some time. You have the plate method. Again, it's so important not to skip meals. Just in everyday life, not just around the holidays, but definitely keep some of your basic healthy eating habits that you're working on now into play during the holidays. And you can do it and you won't feel deprived. So, the top one is one of my favorites. It's a lesson I learned as a kid. Eat less today, you have more leftovers tomorrow. When I was a kid, I thought, I just ate and ate and ate because it tasted so good and I wanted it, Well, when I finally realized, if I leave a little bit, I can enjoy it again the next day. And so, the light bulb clicked. So think about that. And aren't Thanksgiving leftovers fantastic the next day? Yeah. So there's more of it. You're not missing out on anything. So keep that in mind. And then stay busy. Be active. Take a walk with the family. Go out and play in the yard with the kids or the grandkids and work off some of that meal that you've just eaten. You don't have to be aggressive activity, but a little bit of a walk afterwards would really help bring down those blood sugars for you. Instead of falling asleep on the couch with the football game on. Maybe you get out there and toss the ball a little bit.
When you're saying carbs, that's basically saying sugar.
No. Carbohydrates are all of your grains, all of your fruits, and milk and yogurt. Those are carbohydrate foods. Carbohydrates turn into sugar in the body. So we don't look at just the word sugar on the label. Sugar is a carb, but so is fruit, so are grains. And so the thing to keep in mind, remember, carbohydrates are just as important to people with diabetes as to people without it. Your body needs energy just like everybody else, but you want to make the good choices, which are whole grains, high fiber, food choices, and in the healthy portion size.
Okay, on your recipe, though, you don't have sugar in the
Does it have total carbohydrates?
I think it does, that's
Okay.
why it's asking.
Yeah, if it's, we consider one portion 15 grams of carb. Now, indented on your labels, they might list sugar and fiber and other and things like that. That's an FYI to you, for your information. Your carbs are coming from, you're getting this much fiber, this much sugar. The other is the grain. People are often think, what's this other stuff in my food? If you're eating Rice Krispie cereal, the other is the Rice Krispie flour that they made. They just don't list it as rice, they list it as other. So you have to kind of put that together a little bit. Well, this was a great class. You had some great questions. I hope I was able to share a little ideas with you so that you can enjoy your holiday meals healthy. Try some of the different products up here. Again, maybe do a trial run so that you have more confidence on the big day, that you're not worried that something's gonna, you're not making the pie that morning and forgot something. Now I don't have dessert. So Tracy's gonna come in a minute. We're gonna do some raffles. Right on time, Trace. So Tracy has some prizes, and we have some flowers that I brought that we're gonna give away.
What do you know about aspartame?
Excuse me.
Is Splenda a part of aspartame or
No.
derivative
Splenda,
of it?
no, there's artificial sweeteners, which aspartame is one. Splenda is a sugar substitute. Splenda started out as sugar. They took off some molecules, put 3 different molecules, some chlorine mineral molecules on there. So, and chlorine is a mineral that's in our systems, it's not bad for us. So what happens when they change the structure, you can taste the sweetness. When it gets to your stomach, this new structure's like, I don't know what this is, sends it out. But the nice thing is, it doesn't cause gas, bloating, and diarrhea like sugar alcohols can do if you eat too many of them. Sugar alcohol's in a lot of diabetic foods because the body only absorbs half of it. And so we get to taste the sweetness, but we don't have all that sugar to go into the blood. But if a person, some people are very, very sensitive. Some people can, eat a portion and be totally fine. So when you're reading labels, be aware of these sugar alcohols, and so that if you're eating it in something, do I feel okay? I don't have any problems later in the day. Well, then you're okay with that portion size.
What about your diet drinks?
They're all made with either, Splenda, Sweet and Low, or,
And those are not derivatives of...
they're artificial. There are some diet sodas that are made with Splenda. Not all of them. They all have the contracts, I think, with people.
Right.
But it just depends. With sodas, I tell people, diet is absolutely better because you don't have all that sugar.
Right.
But lots and lots and lots of diet soda is not great either because it has phosphorus. That depletes your bones of calcium. One a day, once in a while, sure, that's okay. But for the people, who are drinking maybe 6, 7 a day, they're losing out on some water, maybe some milk that can give them something more nutritional and something better for them.
And both comes out of Splenda. It's so sweet, it's like drinking syrup.
Splenda is about 600 times sweeter than sugar. By making that change, it became a little bit sweeter. And so, again, you have to find what works for you, what taste is good. Some people use only, like if they use Splenda in an envelope, they might just a half or a quarter. That gives them the taste that they want. So you're all individual. You all might find a different thing that you like.
I've been drinking that Lipton green tea diet.
Mhm.
That okay?
Yes, that's good. I like that. Green tea, it has a little antioxidants, so you're getting a little something good with it. So that's nice. But we're not getting loaded down with the sugar that they like to also sell on the market. So.
I used to refer to things like grains, fruit, and what is it called?
Milk and yogurt are the other carbohydrate.
Parties! Sailing all around the world. See what we can see. Splash, 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 splash. Sailing oh so free. Fenson is the captain. Oh, I love it. Welcome to the 15th annual Wacky Wonder Riverway. In just about 30 seconds, we'll be launching a
approximately 1,200 rubber duckies.
Let him fly!
Musicians!
And they're off!
You could call him a collecting connoisseur, and this video says it all. Michael Smith started Cam Tabs for Kids. He'll give these thousands and thousands of tabs to various organizations so they can recycle them for money.
If you do little things, and then you get like a Cub Scout sends you a thank you letter, that's it.
And while recognition for good deeds is always nice, this Gardnerville resident oftentimes works incognito as Casey the Crocodile or Lucky Duck. He donates his time in costume to raise donations for nonprofits like the Carson Valley Food Closet.
We've donated 6,502 pounds in the last year and a half.
But perhaps the most near and dear to his heart is Kids and Horses, a therapeutic riding center for the disabled. More than 15 years ago, Smith needed similar treatment after he was nearly beaten to death, resulting in a brain injury.
Everyone got better. It just took away the depression and the frustration. And then when I found out we had Kids and Horses here, we got involved.
She looks happy and healthy, and she is now. But a few months ago, Chris Campos's family feared she wouldn't make it.
Got very weak in the knees and the legs, collapsed.
Campos had a ruptured aortic aneurysm.
The aorta is a big old garden hose that comes off the heart, and it's about as big as a garden hose, and her aorta had swollen up and ruptured and was bleeding around her heart.
Carson Tahoe Regional Medical Center heart surgeon Dr. Todd Chapman says not very many people survive it. Most die before they get to the hospital.
She was in shock and she was dying.
But every person in this room did their job flawlessly during a 4-hour surgery. And Campos says that's what saved her life, which is why she nominated the entire surgical team to be Red Cross Real Heroes.
They were in sync, and I mean, if one person didn't do what they were supposed to do correctly, I would never have survived.
And as a result, she's here today to thank them from the bottom of her heart. These little boys look up to their older brother. You might think not for any other reason except he's bigger. But actually, without Anthony, one of them likely wouldn't be here right now. Last summer, a typical day hanging out by the backyard pool changed their lives. After all the big kids went inside for just a couple minutes, 5-year-old Chance here screamed for help. His brother Talon was face down in the water.
She was all blue and bloated, like a seal color. Me and my mom ran outside and jumped in the pool, got Talon out, and then I called 911. I was screaming on the phone and telling them to hurry up. They told me to clear his airway so he could start breathing.
Anthony's mom tells us she's incredibly thankful Anthony took charge.
He started yelling at me, telling me I need to calm down, I need to do this, you need to do this, Mom, you need to do that. He was excellent.
Right when that happened, I was saying, please don't be dead, please don't be dead. Officer Sanchez was there within 4 minutes. He was the first official on the scene.
Then this little guy was rushed to the hospital, where doctors expected a lengthy stay and brain damage.
Then 24 hours later, he was released, and they said he was going to be in there 3 to 5 days. And he had no damage, no brain damage, no water in the lungs, no nothing.
Mom calls him the miracle baby. Anthony says what he did is just part of being a big brother.